Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to close this door. Good morning, good morning. Welcome, everybody. We're going to finish up our Stronghold rag quilts today. Tell me when people start rolling in. Ah, great. Good morning, my friends. Where are you watching from? Welcome, my name is Bradie, if we've never met before, and welcome to our Stash Busters series. We are going to be finishing up the quilt you see on display behind me today. It's called Stronghold, and it's a rag quilt. So if you've never done a rag quilt before, this is a perfect little video series for you to tune into and learn just how easy making a rag quilt can be. We're going to put the borders on this thing today. Mine is all put together thanks to Darcy, my darling Darcy. So I'm excited to get this thing all wrapped up. How about you guys? Have you gotten yours all put together yet? I saw that Laura D was kicking some butt, got hers all together. Her colors are fabulous. Her layout is great. You guys check it out in the Sparrow Quilt Co. Daily group. If you're not a member yet, please request to join. You get to see what everybody's doing. We share little tips from around here all the time, sometimes just funny sayings, but it's a great little community of quilters. So it's always fun to be friends with like-minded people on Facebook, right? And share your progress on the Sparrow Quilt Company projects that you've been following along on. If you've not yet gotten your Stronghold pattern, then please visit us at sparrowquiltco.com, put in your email address, and we will email the pattern to you. This is going to be our last video on this pattern, so get it now while you can, while it's free. Once this video series wraps up, then the pattern will then be for sale. So try and get it now while it is free. As always, we like to give away a prize during these videos. So to qualify to win a pair of rag quilting snips, which is going to make your life so much easier when it comes to making all those fluffy parts, you are going to share this video. So underneath the video, you'll see the option to like, comment, and share. Just go ahead and click share, and that will put this video in your Facebook feed so that your quilty friends can join in and follow along and just see what we're up to around here. Next week, we're going to be moving on to a different quilt. It's called Shuffle. I'm going to be doing it out of some Christmas fabrics that arrived this very morning. So that is exciting for me because I can't wait to get my hands on those beautiful fabrics. Are you guys sewing for Christmas yet? Anybody starting those Christmas projects? It's just around the corner, you know. It sneaks up on you every single year, but the great thing is that it comes around every year. So even if you don't finish it up this year, just give it next year. I hope you'll all leave me a comment and let me know where you are watching from and if you've got any questions. I don't know whose big long hair that is, not mine. All right, so we are now at the point of stitching our borders together, and what Sheila instructed in her pattern was to cut 6-inch strips, and we're going to sew them together to make sure we've got enough length for the borders of our quilt. So let's go ahead and start with measuring this quilt to see just how big it is at this point in time. I'm a big fan of measuring the top, the middle, and the bottom and just getting an idea of the average. So I'm folding it in half because I'm using my cutting mat. That is 25. So I like to just draw a rectangle on a piece of paper that represents my quilt, and I mark the measurements on it. Let's measure at the middle. $25 again. This gives us a really good idea of how square the quilt is, And in this scenario, it doesn't really mean life or death. It doesn't mean life or death in any scenario, but if we're loading it on the frame, sometimes it's good to know if maybe there's a little bit of extra fabric in the border or that sort of thing. Oops, that's not 25, it's 50. I measured at 25, but it was folded in half. All right, so now I'm going to go the other direction and measure the side, both sides, and across the center to see what it measures. So there I'm getting 26, so I've got 52 down this side. Let's see what the center is. Again, we're at 52. And let's check the far side. So I'll show you just a minute on the quilt behind me kind of what I'm measuring exactly. Good. All right, so we're nice and square. So essentially what I've just done is measured the top edge of the quilt, I measured through the center of the quilt, and I measured the bottom edge of the quilt. And on my rectangle that I drew on paper, I wrote what this measurement was, what this measurement is, and also what the bottom one was. Now I'm going to repeat that same process, measure down the side, measure up the center, and again, down the right side. And then I've just drawn on my sheet of paper here what those measurements were. And I like to do that with my quilts because it gives me a good idea of whether or not I'm going to have extra border fabric when I'm quilting it, or just what I'm dealing with. So it's always good to know that before we get into the quilting process, right? Especially when we're attaching borders and that sort of thing. We want it to be as precise as possible because borders are kind of the first thing we see when we look at a quilt. We want to make sure that they are nice and square around our beautiful quilts. All right, so I need to keep this handy. I keep trying to put this away, trying to get it out of my way. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is sew our border strips together to get them the right length. We know that I'm going to do the shorter side first, and that was 50. But we're going to be putting 2 sets of borders on this quilt. Let's see. Okay, we're just going to layer them up and attach it at the same time. So let's get started sewing our border strips together. I'm just going to set this aside for a moment. And I keep forgetting to mention the bonus pattern that's in here. Sheila included a pattern to use up your extra strips because you're going to have a little bit of extra fabric. So she created these pillows with that rag look to them as well. And they're double-sided, so they're going to match your double-sided quilt, right? Which is pretty cool. It's nice to use up those extra bits and pieces that are left over from your projects. So I went with a slightly different fabric than Sheila's quilt, and the other fabric on the back, we were out of that beautiful blue, so I used this nice kind of cobalt, and it's got dashes of purple and pink and green through it, so I can live with that leftover choice, I guess. Now, Sheila recommended in this stitching together to sew this with a straight seam. Now, often when we are joining border strips, we'll miter them just like we do with our binding, but her concern was that there wouldn't quite be enough fabric. So you're going to sew that on the straight, not on the, unless of course you got tons of fabric and you really like the look of a miter instead. If I was really worried about matching up this pattern or anything, I could also mind that. That kind of thing doesn't really matter to me. So I'm just going to sew these together, and I'm going to sew these 2 together and then those 2 together. Just make sure that you got your right sides facing. You want them both to kind of have the same texture. I've got my selvage on here still, so my seam allowance is going to look pretty big. And I've already put my walking foot on my machine. I definitely want to use my walking foot when I'm attaching a fabric that's a border that's 2 fabrics thick, plus I'm going to be dealing with the thickness that's involved here. So that walking foot is going to be my best friend today while I'm stitching this together. Right. Oh, I didn't cut enough fabric. I just realized. What did I do here? Use that line. I'm going to keep the same seam allowance, so I got to remember which line I was lining up my raw edge to there. So on each of these pairs of fabric, I'm going to add one more 6-inch strip. When I cut this fabric off the bolt this morning, the first edge was so full. I shared a picture of it in the Sparrow Quilt Co Daily group just to show the importance of why we should square up our first edge. The piece I took off, look how much I had to take off to make it work. It was that fat at the bottom and that skinny at the top. So it's so important to square up your fabrics so that you get things as precise as you want them to be. Okay, I'm gonna sew these two together and then we'll cut some more strips because hummingbird brain kicked in this morning. What can I say? Kids are going back to school, so we've had lots of running around and shopping to do. Got some haircuts to do today. I'll tell you, those scruffy little summer hairdos have got to go. Give them a good shower, wash off their whole summer tan. We're doing okay for questions there, love? Okay. I was just saying to Matt a few minutes ago that the girls up front, we got a couple boxes of fabric arrived this morning, and it was like it was Christmas the way they all come running to rip open the boxes. It's so fun to get new fabric. Oh, I can leave that, and we're going to sew our next two together. Let's bring it over this way. Put those two edges together. This color of blue is just gorgeous. I'm so excited I get to have it on my quilt. This quilt's going to keep me super warm this winter, guys. Are you chronically cold? I'm chronically cold. Our sun seems to have disappeared for the summer. Summer's come to a screeching halt. It's been pretty chilly. I actually put on woolly socks this morning, you guys. Woolly socks. I know you people in the south are like, please send it here, but oh, it's only the last day of August. We don't get enough summer up here. It's gone before we know it, so. But I shouldn't complain. It was a pretty good summer otherwise. Oh, sure. All right, so now I just got to dig out my scraps. There they are. Good. They weren't buried too far under the pile. All right, so I need to sew a third strip to both of those. I'm going to cut one more 6-inch strip of each of these. Oh, I already sent away my big ruler. Okay. This one's a shorty, but I'm just going to be tricky. Take off my slider. I'm just talking to myself over here, guys. Just listen in. Yes, my ruler's a little bit short. I'm just going to shuffle it along as I go. It'll be fine because it's just a 6-inch strip, so it's the full width of the ruler. Slide it along and then finish off that cut. I should have joined two of those rulers together, but I always think of the good ideas 3-4 minutes later. I'm really good for like thinking of a great comeback the next week. Okay, and I'm just going to cut another couple of 6-inch strips off of this piece, and then we'll add those to the 2 that I've already begun. So that's why Sheila was concerned with the straight seam, because we might not have enough length to border all 4 sides of this quilt if we miter it. Okay, sounds good. Ah, awesome. We just got a second camera running today, guys, and my microphone only talks to you folks on Facebook, but we've got a second camera now that's streaming to YouTube as well. So if you prefer YouTube, you can go watch us over there as well. Not what? I gotta talk louder. Okay. Hopefully it doesn't sound like I'm yelling at y'all. All right, we've almost got these all cut up. Boy, I just had a tiny scrap of that one left over. Get rid of that. Put this away and this away. Oh, I'm gonna need those in a minute, but let's get them out of the way for now. The less stuff I have in my way, the less stuff I have to move. So these are the 2 that I've already sewn. And so these are going to be, 87 inches long or so. But we need 104 and 100. So we're going to add on another strip here. Right, that one is already sewn. And this is a single, and this is a single. Now, where's my side that I've sewn? Okay. Seam is down. Good. I am really, really, really bad for sewing 3 strips together and having done my seam allowance wrong on one side. It's obvious if it's prints, but with fabrics like this where both sides look usable, sometimes I mess that up. So that's what I'm looking for, is to make sure that I'm going to seam this on the correct side, and then I don't have to unstitch. Although you guys got to watch me unstitch on Wednesday, something didn't quite line up on my mystery summer sampler, so I had to rip those blocks apart. I really try my best to never rip. I'm sure it's not your favorite either, but I'll rip it at least once, maybe twice if it's really bad. But after that, it just becomes humility. Be humble. So pretty much what we're doing here is we're just creating enough length that we can cut 2 borders out of it. So 3 strips sewn together is going to give us about 120 inches, and then we can cut 2 strips out of that that will be 50. And out of the second piece, we'll cut 2 strips out of that that are 52. At least that's what my quilt measures. You're going to measure your specific quilt to make sure that you get the accurate numbers for yours. So this is a set of 3 now. Let's set this over here. And here's my set of 2. There's my seam. We're going to add this 3rd strip to give us enough length to cut those borders. And remember, this is going to be a straight seam. So I suspect we've had a few new joiners since we've begun. So to those of you who are just joining us, welcome. My name is Bradie. This is our Stash Buster series, and today we're working on the quilt you see behind me. It's called Stronghold, and it is a rag quilt. It is the perfect beginner quilt. So if you are looking for a great quilt to teach somebody else, or you yourself are looking to learn how to quilt, this is an awesome quilt to start with. There's no matching of seams. There's just nothing tricky about it. It's very straightforward sewing. If you're interested in the pattern, visit us at sparrowquiltco.com, where you can put in your email address and you can download the pattern for free. Today is the last day of this video series. Starting next Friday, we'll have a whole new quilt on display. So get this pattern now while it's free, because after we wrap up the video series, it then costs you money to buy it. But we do this every Friday at 10:30. And we've been having a lot of fun. We started this back in January. And I'm starting to lose track of how many quilts we've done, probably 6 now. But it's just an effort to help you use up your stash. I mean, I have a big stash at home, and I keep bringing it in and selling it here in the shop, and then I drag more home, or I travel and I buy stuff at other shops. There's always stuff going in, not enough going out. So that's why we're doing this, just to help everybody use up their stash. And free patterns, never a bad thing, right? Okay, I'm going to sew all my borders together before I start cutting up anything. All right, again, this is my right side up. So I'm bringing over a 3rd piece, and I'm going to join them with a straight seam. We're not mitering this like we do when we're doing borders. Because this strip is so thick, we would lose about 6 inches of fabric because of the join. You always use up more fabric when you join at an angle. If you were submitting this to the Houston Quilt Show, I might advise you differently. But this is a nice cuddle quilt for your couch. At least I hope you're keeping this one. You deserve it. These rag quilts are so soft and cuddly, you're going to love it in the wintertime. Get this one out of the way, and then I'm going to sew up that next one. So in summary, what we've done here is made 4 strips that are 3 lengths of fabric long. Oh, what I'm going to do is bring this one over first. Okay. So this is my right side up, and this is my right side up. And we're just going to join these 2 strips together. Next, we'll cut them into the lengths that we need. There we go. All right, so now I've got all my borders joined, and because this time we're going to be sewing, so on the wrong side, the seams are inside the quilt, and on this side, the seams are showing. I told you guys before that I flipped my quilt. This is going to be my front, so I've got all my ragging on this side instead of this side. So I'll sew my borders onto this side so that all the fluff is showing out here. And then on this side, it's going to look like a seam normally does. But what I'm going to do is eliminate some of the bulk in my seam allowances here, because it's quite a big fat seam allowance. I've got easily an inch there, maybe more. So I'm just going to trim it down to about half. I don't want to go too small with flannels. And I'm just using my scissors for this one. I could have used my rotary cutter. It doesn't matter what you use. Just because of the bulk, sometimes it's harder to get that ruler in there and arrange everything. So I'll just use my scissors. This doesn't have to be precise. It's not, it is not life or death, the width of the seam. All right, so there's 2 seams on each border strip that we got to seek out. Yeah. Everybody comes into the room and they say, "Are you doing videos?" And then they retreat. Not everybody. Sometimes you get to overhear a work conversation. But I guess that's the fun reality of this, is there's actually a quilt show or shop in the background. We're just in a tiny room in this 5,000 square foot space. So I really just cutting off the salvages, you know, getting those out of there. They don't behave like the rest of fabric, so it's always better not to include your salvages. And they're typically a different color, so get them out of there. It's almost like a ribbon along the edge, you know, how it doesn't unravel. There we go. All right, last one. And then we'll trim these down to the size that we need. A little bit later, I'll show you the quilt we're going to start next week. Looking forward to that one. It's a nice and easy one. Again, they're always nice and easy. That's the whole goal. So don't forget to share the video, you guys. You definitely want to win these rag snips that we're giving away. They are spring loaded. So that means they bounce back open. And every time you make a snip into this quilt to create this rag, and believe me, there's going to be a lot of snipping, they're going to spring back open. It's surprisingly a lot of work to operate a pair of scissors, and your hand gets tired really quickly. Thank goodness for rotary cutters. We're so lucky to be quilting in the day and age that we are. All right, so here, just for fun, I'm going to measure this to see how long she is. Sometimes flannels aren't as wide as regular cottons. They can be around 42 inches instead of 44. So let's just see exactly what we're dealing with here. "32 4 times is 128. So out of this, we need to cut 2 borders that are 50 inches. And out of this, I need to cut 2 borders that are 52 inches. Then I need to do the same thing with this pile of border fabric. So in order to get a 50-inch border, what I'm going to do, let's see, I want all my extra fabric to end up down here. Okay. So this is my trick when I have a short cutting mat and I need to cut a longer border. I'm going to fold it in half on itself. I know I need 50 inches. So fold it in half, it's going to be 25. I'm going to line up my fold at the 0, and I'm just going to cut this at the 25. Because I don't have a cutting mat that is, well, I do up front, but then you guys can't see me. Okay. So I'll line up my fold on the 0, and then I'm going to cut on the 25, and that is going to give me one border that equals 50. Now I could be a little more frugal here, so I can, you know, bring my my top part of the strip so that it's not quite as long. Everything I cut off is just going to be waste, right? So I might as well bring it as close to the end, as close to the 25 as I can. And then you just keep adjusting your fold so that you're back on the 0. But, you know, don't nitpick it. You're going to have a nice piece to put into your stash if it's a little bit big anyways. Just put it somewhere where you'll use it again. All right, now I need my ruler back and my cutter back. We'll cut this at the 25. And there I have got my one border. What I'm going to do right now while I have it here and ready, where did I put my pins? Does anybody see them? Here they are. At the halfway mark, I'm going to put a pin. And then I'm going to fold these into quarters as well. So I'll bring this back on itself. And I'm going to pin at that quarter mark too. And then I'll repeat that on the other long side. And now my border is marked for distributing evenly on the edge of my quilt. I'll mark my quilt at the halfway point and the quarters as well, and I'll line up those pins to each other to make sure that I've distributed the length of this border evenly. All right, now I can set that aside, and let's cut a second border that's also 50 inches. All right, so I'm just lining up everything nice and straight. I've got the fold on the 0 marking. There we go. Now for just a minute I was looking at that plaid and my eye was like, maybe you should try and straighten this out. But you know what? It's going to be fine. I didn't really pay a lot of attention to the grain in here, so it's not going to be the end of the world. This isn't a quilt that's going to hang on the wall and have to be perfectly straight and square. So if it's got a little bit of humility in there, again, I'm okay with that. All right. So now this piece is done. It is a leftover from that strip. I no longer need it. I'm going to set it aside. That can go into my pillow. We're going to mark the halfway point of this border, and we're going to mark the quarter points of this border as well. Sometimes if I'm using it right away, I'll just crease it really deeply with my finger and really finger press it. And but these are thick, so they don't show the finger creases very well. Flannel is much thicker than the regular cotton. And this is a yarn dyed flannel, so it's very plush. It's really got a lot of oomph to it. All right, so now we're cutting 52-inch borders. We're going to do that same little scenario again, but this time I'm going to be cutting at the 26-inch point. I'm going to have my fabric folded in half so that 26 twice gives me a 52-inch border. Everybody with me? Yeah, you are. I'm a sucker for you. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I shouldn't sing while I'm doing my video. If I'm at home, I'm singing with the radio on. Or my playlist going. What have you guys got on your playlist? Do you need to listen to music while you're working? Especially when I'm cleaning house. Just need to put on your favorite song and love your home. So I try to think of it anyways. All right. So I'm lined up at the 26. My fold is at the 0. I'm going to slice on the 26. That's going to give me a border that is 52 inches. Oh, stop. Stop. Right now my quilt is 52 inches, but I'm about to add 12 inches on either side. Ooh, that was a close one. So we're not going to sew that yet. Let's set this one aside, and let's set one of these aside. My goodness, am I ever glad that I tuned into that. I would have been really disappointed in myself if I had not made that realization. Okay, so now we're going to take the second fabric and we're going to cut 2 more borders that are 50 inches. That is a relief. Oh boy, that was a close one. Were you all screaming at me through your screens? No, it won't be 52. This one I'm cutting 50. Right? Keep it nice and square to itself. Line up your fold at the 0. Okay, so I now have that lined up at the 25. We're gonna cut a strip, fold it in half at the 25. That's gonna give us 50 inches of border. This marking the halfway and the quarter is also going to be helpful as we line those up to each other. We're going to sew them both at the same time, so they need to be evenly distributed. Can you guys hear the machines running in the background? That's renter Angie. She is here finishing a quilt this morning. Okay.
Why is it important to measure the borders?
Oh, so a question from YouTube. It's a good one too. Why is it important to measure the borders? Because you're going to get a quilt that is much more square. When we look at a quilt that's hanging on the wall, if there's too much border in that, too much fabric in the border, it gets a bit of a wave. And sometimes it'll kind of hang funny on one bottom corner. And that's when you know there was too much border in your fabrics. My preference is, I'll do this again. We talked about it earlier. I like to measure my quilt across the top, through the center, and through across the bottom. And I do that same measurement down the left side, down the middle, and down the right. And then I take an average of those 3 numbers. Today, my numbers were all the same, which is rare, I have to admit. But that's not always the case. So if I had a 51, a 51 and a half, and a 50.5, I would cut that border at 51 because it's the average of the 3. So that's just going to give us a more square, finished project if we do measure our borders. What I used to do is just take a big long length and sew it on, and I always had that wave in my borders. I get much better results now if I measure and be really precise. I hope that answers your question. Thank you for asking. That was a good one. All right. So I've got my quarters marked and my halves marked. I'm going to set that aside. Let's cut one more 50-inch border. Pardon me. I had my oatmeal this morning. Did you all have your oatmeal this morning? Throw some blueberries in there. It's super yummy. We're working on a different idea for the microphone for the YouTube videos. Hopefully next week we can have something that's a little bit better, so I don't have to yell. Okay, so I'm cutting at the 25 once more. That's a scrap now. Throw it in your scrap bin. And let's mark our halfway points and our quarter points. Good, good, good. All right. So now we're going to bring the quilt over and we're going to attach these borders. These I'm going to set aside for just a moment. Stuff them there. Remind me that I put those there. I'm sure to forget. This over here. What I'm going to do first is join the 2 borders to each other. Now we want our wrong sides together. The seams are going to be touching one another. We don't want right sides together. This is different than what we normally do. Make sure your wrong sides are together. There's so much fluff in the air. I need a drink. So in theory, when I lay these on top of each other, the pins should line up to one another. Because I cut them both 50 and I marked their centers. And we're looking good. I'm going to pin both sides because I want the outside to stay together and the inside we're going to sew to the quilt here in a minute. Sheila suggested having these seams open, it will reduce the bulk. So I'm going to put a pin where that seam is so that it keeps everything nice and flat for me. These lined up perfectly. And I'm not unhappy about that. And be careful with flannel because it's a bit more shifty than cottons. So you want to make sure you pin it in place. You want to use a lot of pins with flannel because it moves around.
We put batting on the border pieces.
Oh, sure you can. So this is the point where you would want, yes, the question is, can we put batting in the border pieces? And this is the step where you would include the batting. And I would probably stitch it in there first before I joined it onto the quilt. It's actually a good idea. It would really keep the same thickness into the border as the rest of the quilt. I've got another seam now in my blue border, so I'm going to open that seam up and I'm going to pin it in place so that it doesn't close back up on me. I can't believe how much fluff is in here today. Lovely. This one is ready to put onto the quilt, so I'm going to set it aside for a moment. And now I will do this second border. Remember that we are going to have our wrong sides facing each other. And if you want to put batting in your border, this is where you're going to include it. My 1/2 and 1/4 markings are lining up nicely, so I'm happy about that. And I am pinning it on both sides just to help keep things in place because flannel is so shifty. Just pinning that seam open so it behaves how I want it to. You just got to be bossy with fabric, otherwise it'll just go wherever it wants. All right, we're almost done here. We're almost ready to mark our 1/2s and 1/4s on our quilt as well. Using a lot of pins today.
Laura says she's going to be doing the tearaway designs on the borders.
So Laura says she's going to do the tearaway designs on her borders. I like that idea a lot, Laura. Give it a bit more interest. Which design did you choose? You could press this. Yes, the question is, would you press the seams open first? And you absolutely could. I had put my iron away earlier, so. No, I won't. I personally will not be. Okay, so now we are ready to mark the quilt. Let's find the correct side. I think this is the longer side. It is. So this is the side that I'm attaching to first. Yep, here we go. So I have got my quilt folded in half, and I'm going to put a pin at that halfway point. Now I'm going to put a pin at the quarter. And then I will do the other quarter as well. Now you can see I'm just doing all of this just by folds in the quilt. I'm not using a measuring tape. It's not terribly precise, but in a way it is. It really, really does make a difference in distributing your borders evenly, especially with a shifty fabric like flannel, because things can move around very easily with this type of fabric. I'm going to flip this over and do the other end at the same time. Then I'll probably pin both borders on and then sew each end. This end had a seam at the halfway point, so that was easy to find. There we go, and another quarter, and we'll be ready to put those borders on. All right. So because I want my seam to be sewn on the colorful side, I am going to put my border on here with the back facing the border. And I have to be careful about which fabric I put down there. When I sew this on and then open it up, I want the appropriate border color on the appropriate side. So the border that goes on this side of the quilt is the border that will touch this side of the quilt. My gray border will be on my gray and green side. My bright blue border will be on my brightly colored side. I'm going to pin at the corners at the starting point and the ending point. And then I'm going to check my half and quarter markings in between. I find it's really good if I have a surface that's nice and flat, big enough for what I'm laying out. If not, you can work in sections, but you're going to get the most square results if everything's able to lay flat and not have any drag of pulling over the edge of the table. So my quarter lines up really nice. And because I have two pins there, one in the quilt, one in the border, I'm going to take that second pin and put it at the 8th marking. The halfway point looks good too. This was where I had a seam pinned open, so I've already got an extra pin in there.
Lucia says, with your sample, you are not using batting, and that is an option to consider.
So Lucia is asking in my sample that I don't have batting. You are correct. There's no batting in the border. I have batting in the blocks of the quilt, and you can see that in my prior videos and in the instructions of the pattern, but we didn't put batting in the border, but you certainly could if you prefer. You would put it in between the border strips before you attach them to the quilt. Trying hard to remember to repeat those questions. I forget all the time. Okay, I'm just going to sew this right now. I was going to pin the other one too, but I don't want to fight with too many pins, hurt myself. So let's just go ahead and sew this now. We're going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance like we did for all the seams in the ragging part. It's nice if you have a table that's big enough that can support your entire quilt. It's hard to work with it if half of it is hanging off the table. So keep that in mind as you are wrestling with this giant thing. I'm going to need to sew it with the border fabric on the bottom. All of these seams, we want them to be open as we stitch over them. So I want to sew with those on the top, and then I'll be able to control how they lay. If I can see them, right? If they're on the bottom, I won't see them. So now I got to rearrange this whole bulky thing. Don't worry, I'll be fine. All right, here we go. Remember to use your walking foot for this. And you definitely want a sharp needle. If you did not change your needle at the beginning of this project, change your needle now. This is the thickest you've got. Make sure you're lining things up as you go. I use lots of pins, but I can still see some shifting. This flannel is a shifty guy. So I just approached a seam. I made sure it was pressed open before I sewed over it. Those layers are shifting. I'm just continuing to adjust as I go, making sure my seams are all open. You might even consider wearing your machingers for this. It's going to help you grab this fabric a little bit easier. If you have machingers quilting gloves, they have rubber tips on the fingers. Just helps you grab everything and move it more easily. Coming up to another seam, I'm going to make sure it's open. We're near the end. We're getting there. All right, last seam to mind. Make sure that it is pressed open. Or that it's open when you stitch over it. We're not pressing at the moment. There we go. All right, how are we doing for time, Matt?
11.
That's it? Okay. Oh, wow, 11:40. Holy moly. That took a long time, you guys. So just a reminder, guys, last time you'll probably get a chance to share this video. You're going to want to win those rag snips to make an easier job of creating all the rag on your quilt. But let's pin on the next border. Oh, hi, everybody. Especially those of you at YouTube. This is our first time streaming live, and we're excited to be joining the game here on YouTube.
You tell them there's a little eye in the top right corner of your YouTube video, click it, and that will take you to a Facebook video for better sound.
Okay, so if you're watching on YouTube and you're not happy with the sound, just click the little eye in the top corner of the video, and that will take you to the Facebook video where you'll have better sound. And we are working on it, so hopefully next Friday we will have the microphone issues resolved. All right, are you ready for my border reveal? Dun, da, da. So now I've attached that one border on the top edge of the quilt or the bottom edge of the quilt, whatever this may be. And what I'm also going to have to do is sew along this outer edge because we're going to create a rag there as well. Oh, Sheila did have batting in her border. It's not in the instructions. All right, guys. So that's why I didn't put batting in my border, because it wasn't mentioned in the instructions. But when I looked at Sheila's just now, she's got batting in her border. So between those two layers, you can put batting in there. Yeah, I probably could. I won't sew that closed. So on the back side of my quilt, I've got a nice grayish silver border. And on the bright side of my quilt, the right side, I've got that beautiful purpley blue. I'm pretty happy with how this is looking. It's a nice, strong frame around that quilt.
Olive is asking if we'll get on YouTube all the time now. We'll stream the show at the same time all the time.
Yes, Olive, great question. Yes, we're going to be streaming to YouTube now as well. So we'll be on Facebook and on YouTube. Anytime we're doing videos, we're going to do both platforms at the same time. I know a lot of you like us on Facebook already, but go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, and then you'll get the notifications every time we go live and every time we add a new video. Then you won't miss any of the fun. I hate missing out on the fun. So I'm actually going to put my border on the back side of the quilt so that I'm doing things correctly, like I told you the first time around. And just make sure that the border that goes on this side of the quilt is the border that's touching this side of the quilt. Now, did you all get a chance to share the video? You know you want to win that prize. I'm going to line up my outer corner first, and then I'm going to chip away at my quarters and my halfway point. And that helps me evenly distribute the length of my border because I've cut it to the exact length that my quilt is. And add more pins along the way too. You want your pinning to be evenly distributed across the whole thing. If you've got big gaps between your pins, things shift around. And we already talked about how flannel is a shifty guy. I hope you'll all share your photos of this project with us in the Sparrow Quilt Co Daily group. We also do videos on Wednesdays. That's a mystery summer sampler that we've been working on Wednesdays. And you can find all this info on our website at sparrowquiltco.com. You can sign up for all the patterns. We'll send them to you by email. And we also send out a reminder right before the video so that you don't forget to join in. And soon we've got a precision piecing series coming as well to teach you all those little tips and tricks that you never learned from taking a class. So many of you are self-taught. So sometimes it's nice to just learn all those little tips and tricks that you get when you are in a hands-on class with a teacher. So we'll definitely get these two borders put on the quilt. And as we discussed, feel free to add batting to your borders. Maybe I should go back and read it again. Maybe my hummingbird brain just missed that in the instructions. Sheila's probably at home waving her fist at me. Okay, we are all pinned up. We are ready to stitch this border. And again, I am sewing with my seams on top because I want them all open. And if I sew them on the bottom, it's very likely that I'll miss what direction they're going. So let's sew with them on the top to make sure that they go where we want them to. All right, are you ready? Let's do this. I'm always sewing slower when I'm approaching a pin. Okay, let's press this open. Oh. Hold it open. I'm not pressing anything. Coming up to a couple of pins, I'm just slowing down. There we go. Lining up everything as I go. I'm going to steal one of these pins and put it in here. It's a big space with no pin there. Ouch! I just poked myself. Ah, big baby. So did you all go over to Sparrow Quilt Co. and laugh at my square beginning of my fabric? Always good to square the beginning of your fabric. Make sure you join that group, guys. We want to see your projects. And I love seeing you making friends with each other and talking about your other projects. I believe it was Heather shared her first attempts at free motion quilting. And it's so nice just to have other people come and tell you that you're doing a great job. You know, we tend to be hard on ourselves. So it's like having a support group for quilting. You choose a winner yet, babe? Okay. So Olive is asking, does the kit come with everything for the front and everything for the back, and how about the middle? That's a really good question, Olive. All the fabrics are there for the front and the back, but I don't send you the batting. I am confident you've probably got lots of scraps in your closet that you could chop into small pieces and use up for this project. Everybody has scrap batting in their closet, right? You don't need a big brand new piece of batting for this project. Use what you have as leftover bits and pieces. You'll probably clear out a fair amount. I know I did. I used all scrappy bits for this. The pieces are only cut 5 by 9, so you can really even use quite small pieces. So Valerie is asking about thread weight, top versus bottom. In this particular project, I use the same thread top and bottom because it's a double-sided quilt. And just my domestic machine runs well with that situation. When I'm stitching on the long arm, I typically use a lighter weight thread in that scenario. But here, same thread, top and bottom, in the bobbin. On the long arm, I use the lighter weight thread in the bobbin. And whatever weight on top. Typically, glide is 40. Yeah. So the top thread on my long arm is 40 weight. The bottom is 60. Here, it's just 40 and 40, top and bottom. Thanks for your question, Valerie. Oh, we're in the home stretch now. Ooh, now I'm getting excited about lunch. Does anybody else get excited about lunch? Who likes to eat? Me. No, I did not bring lunch today. We finished up the other day. I'm like, woo, I got tuna sandwiches. And Matt's like, I don't want tuna. All right, let's get all these pins out of here. And Matt's going to pick us a winner so I can send somebody some rag snips. And let's hold this up. I'm going to hold it side to side. Oh, yeah, I'm really liking those borders. What do you think? It's nice and strong, hey? I love that color. Woohoo! All right, let's throw this up here for a second. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to put batting in there so that those borders behave the same way as the rest of the quilt. On the back side, that's how my border looks. That silvery gray plaid. It's fabulous, darling, fabulous. All right, that is pretty much it for our Stronghold quilt. Of course, you're going to add 2 more borders on the sides of the quilt, and you're going to finish it up. Do a little bit of quilting in those borders. Like Laura suggested, she's going to use the tearaway designs, which is just a tissue paper that you lay over and then you stitch over top of. And it's going to give a little bit more interest to that border. Little something to look at instead of just the X's that we did in the bricks. Do you guys want to see next week's quilt? We're going to do a really simple one. It's called Shuffle. I have it handy. Nope, we've not. So this is it here. It makes a really good sized quilt. I think it's like 72 square. Oh. This one's done out of all those cute Glamper fabrics.
Mary McCaffrey just got her quilt back from Bob and says thank you so much, Bob.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Mary just got her quilt back from us. We did the quilting for her. My brother Bob runs the long arms out there. She said thank you to Bob. I'll be sure to tell him, Mary. He can probably hear me yelling right now, I hope. Anyways, here is Shuffle. So you can see it's a good sized quilt. Landon's watching. Hi, Landon. Landon's in Italy right now, guys. She'll be home in a week. So there, you can see how big it is. I had to have the big guy come in and help me hold it up. I can't. So that's what we're going to start next week. You can look for that pattern starting next Friday on the website at sparrowquiltco.com. We will get started on that one next. All right. Once we have a winner, then I'll let you all go and enjoy your lunch too. What? Oh, do you guys want to pick the winner today? Just kidding. JK. Matt's going to find a winner for us right now. So I'm going to do my shuffle next week, starting next week in a Christmas line that's really cute. It's called Christmas Delivery by Riley Blake. I already have the fat quarters on the website. Pardon me. We got all the coordinates there too, the solids and the fabrics that go along with it. Donna Hill, you are our winner today. So Donna, what I need from you, please, is to, send us a private message here on Facebook. Include your email, your phone number, and your shipping address, please. And Donna, if you don't mind, just include that you won today's rag snips. We'll get an order into the system and we will get that sent out to you ASAP. Thanks everybody for watching. If you've been watching from YouTube, please subscribe to our channel, and don't worry, we'll have all of our sound issues resolved for next week. We'll be back on Wednesday morning at 10:30 with our Mystery Summer Sampler, and we'll be back next Friday with the new quilt that we just showed you called Shuffle. Stronghold, you mean? Okay. This pattern will be available through the weekend still yet. We're going to leave it up there for you to go ahead and download. You've got a couple more days to get that one for free. After the weekend, it will be up for sale, and the next pattern will be the free one. If you're curious about our prior episodes of Stash Busters, check us out on YouTube or check out the Stash Busters section on our website at sparrowquiltco.com, and you can see all the prior videos that we have done. Yeah, we got lots of tips and trick videos there on the website for you to learn from, and look forward to our precision piecing series that will be coming up soon as well. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy it. It's a long one, and if your kids are not back in school yet, enjoy the quiet of the house next Tuesday when they go back to school. I know I certainly will. Take care, everybody, and have a wonderful weekend. Bye for now.